Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jana Vallabha Girivaradha Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Ranandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Ranandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashnatiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Hari. Today we are reading from Quintessence, the ripened fruit of all Vedic literature. Why it is so? But he only took the small piece. How it became fruit? Yeah, it became seed. How it became fruit? Because it has both things. First of all, he has a knowledge and philosophy of the Vedas, which considered to be not very palatable. Most of the times it's quite dry. Upanishadic philosophy is a very precise, very scientific, which will come later, discussing our scientist, ISKCON scientist today. At the same time, has the nectarian narrations of pastimes. So therefore, both of those things combined together, the Vedic philosophy, the Upanishadic truths coming from, at the same time, the Idihasa style, Puranic style of discussion, narrations, storylines, lifetimes, pastimes, things like that, make together this thing very, very palatable. So as Prabhupada said, quoted actually in the Vedic scriptures, when you add the yogurt, who's the cook? What to add more to make it palatable? Black pepper, camphor. What was else there? Honey. Honey makes always nice. Honey is never wrong. So this makes very, very tasteful. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is most tasteful, especially Shukadeva Goswami, as you mentioned, and all the Prabhupada, and finally when we receive the same knowledge from our spiritual masters, it becomes very, very, very sweet. So therefore we are reading today Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. According to instructions of our dear Srimad Bhagavatam class Acharya Advaita Simha, I'm reading 3 verses, and therefore this task is quite a bit a challenge, since there's 2 different subjects. This is 2 verses ending in this chapter, 1 verse which has a commentary from next chapter. Then we are supposed to talk a little bit of a disappearance there and the personality of Swarup Damodar Prabhu Maharaj, Maharaj, and also there's a victory of Ramachandra Prabhu Maharaj. Bhagavan. who defeated Ravan. Yeah, that's it. Prabhu. So therefore we start reading the verse 38 as far as I understand. Ya Pristo Munibhi Praham Ya Pristo Munibhi Praham Dharmana Navidhan Shubhan Dharmana Navidhan Shubhan Nrinam Varnashramanam Cha Nrinam Varnashramanam Cha Sarvabhuta Hita Sada Sarvabhuta Hita Sada Ya Pristo Munibhi Praha Dharmana Navidhan Shubhan Nrinam Varnashramanam Cha Sarvabhuta Hita Sada Nrinam Cha Vristo Munibhi Praha Nrinam Varnashramanam Cha Sarvabhuta Hita Mataji? Ya Pristo Munibhi Praha Nirmamana Pravan Nirmashranam Cha Sarvabhuta Sada Ya who Prishta being questioned Munibhi by the sages Praha spoke Dharman the duties Nanavidhan many varieties Subhan auspicious Nrinam of the human society Varna Ashramanam of the Varnas and Ashramas Cha and Sarvabhuta for all living beings Hita who does welfare Sada always. Translation by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In reply to questions asked by great sages, he, Swayam Buddha Manu, out of compassion for all living entities, taught the diverse secret duties of the man in general and the different varnas and ashramas. Unfortunately, the discussion of the questions and answers is not recorded here, neither in text, neither in purports. So therefore we read the next verse. Eha etata adi rajasya manoscharitam adbhutam varnitam varshiniyasya tad apatyodayam shrinu. I have spoken to you of the wonderful character of Swayambhu Manu, the original king, whose reputation is worthy of description. Please hear as I speak of the flourishing of his daughter Devahuti. Thus ends Bhaktivinoda Purport in the 3rd canto, 22nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the marriage of Kartamuni. And we start in 23, chapter 23, Devahuti's lamentation. It's interesting enough. The last word says a flourishing of Devahuti. At the same time, chapter called lamentation. So how the flourishing and lamentation comes together? Who knows already? Who ran ahead and read a little bit of thing? You know why she was lamenting? Because she had children. She had quite a bit of children, 9 children. Right? That was not a cause of frustration. Well, that was expected. Well, how the children came about then. No. She was happy to do that. That actually comes in the next verse. In the first and second verse.
She saw that her sisters have children and she said don't have any children. So
that was short lamentation. Because the children, those persons they have in one day. So they enjoyed family life for quite a bit of years, as far as I know, about 100 years. And finally she got pregnant, and the next same day she had the children, like grown up already. Okay? Nah. What the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is about? God and they're doing what? Bhakti. So the whole thing, she was lamenting. I'm sorry to recount because there's a description of some acharyas who write a short synopsis of the chapter. It is that she was enjoying, and not like we think, oh, it was illicit. Actually, as previously mentioned, Swayambhuva Manu and both Karamani and Devahuti, they were enjoying life pretty much. First in austerity, and connecting to Ramachandra, he was quite a bit of long time in a forest, and we can say also in austerity. Can we say they don't enjoy the life there in the forest? I think he was enjoying life more than the palace in the forest. It was very pleasant. Devotee who just yesterday, the Russian devotee, said that such a nice thing. In just a couple of days already, I'm spending here, and such a nice nature and devotees. It's just the coverings of the heart, they start to peel and fall off. So enjoying in life in the forest in austerity, although she didn't look as a princess anymore, she did. At the same time, later on, completely satisfied with the service, Kardama, he, by his mystic power, created the whole flying palace with the hundreds of servants and maidservants and so on and so on. And they traveled around and enjoyed life and their children. But when Kardama Muni was about to leave, she kind of, because of the service to Kardama Muni, she got also the hint, the understanding of the values of his lifetime. And his mentality and his goals and so on. And she understood, she didn't absorb it so much. She had an association of such exalted husband. At the same time, she was not, didn't take advantage of such a great devotee. That was her lamentation, main thing. And therefore, she asked, first of all, to give her spiritual knowledge. But since that was already decided, and after children, she would have to stay alone, and that was actually the arrangement of a marriage in the first place. Then immediately when she will have children, he will leave. And therefore she said, well, very nice, I have quite a bit of daughters, but since I also want to have a knowledge, spiritual knowledge, And that is mostly imparted by the male descendants. Could you please grant me the son as powerful or spiritually potent as you, so he can instruct me when you left. So that was the whole arrangement, whole desire. But the story unfolds, and next verse will be starting the whole thing. Maitrivacha pitribhyam prashtite sadhvi patim ingita kovida. This is about COVID time. This is Sanskrit. Ingita kovida nityam parachayat pritya bhagavan bhavam bhagavaniva bhavam prabhum. Maitreya continued, after the departure of the parents, the chaste woman Devahuti, who could understand the desire of the husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, served her husband. Now it's coming purport a little bit. Kovida. Okay. Nothing interesting to us. Ingita Kovida, understanding the desires. Yeah, Kovida. So purport comes like that. The specific example of Bhavani is very significant. Bhavani means the wife of Bhava, or Lord Shiva. Bhavani or Parvati, the daughter of the king of the Himalayas, selected Lord Shiva, who appeared to be just like a beggar, as her husband. In spite of her being the princess, she undertook all kinds of tribulations to associate with Lord Shiva. Are the current wives are ready to take all the tribulations to associate with the proper husbands? Yes. Who said yes? You're ready to take up. And now it's coming up. Just wait the promises yet. But you are sitting underneath it. Oh, sorry, missed some few words. Oh yeah, associate Lord Shiva, who did not even have a house, but was sitting underneath a tree and passing his time in meditation. Who would like to marry such a husband? No house, just sitting meditating in a tree. You're like, princess, yes, I want you as a husband. But the value is coming up. Why that's happening? Although Bhavani was the daughter of the very great king, she used to serve Lord Shiva just like a poor woman. The wife's principle of undertaking the same situation as a husband is quite unusual. We know the wife of Dhritarashtra, Gandhari. She immediately, when she got married, she blindfolded her because her husband was blindfolded. She didn't want to be in any way superior to the husband. So she also was a princess, similar as the Devahuti mentions further. And she undertook the completely same lifestyle as a poor woman. Similarly, Devahuti was the daughter of the emperor, Swayambhuva Manu. Yet she preferred to accept Kardamuni as her husband. She served him with a great love and affection, and she knew how to please him. So how she was pleasing? Any ideas? Serving. What kind of service? Cooking halwa? Cleaning? Assisting yagyas. One of the main duties of the wife, starting with the king and especially his sages, is to be present in all yagyas. King cannot, it is prescribed in the same Manu, that king cannot perform any yagya if there is a wife not present. He cannot do him alone. It's impossible. It's just against the rules and regulations. King cannot start any yagya if there is no husband, no wife, and at least one wife. There's usually the main wife and there's a couple of the other wives, but yeah, at least one main wife has to be there. Otherwise, yagya is insufficient. So this is a part of the whole thing. So she was also serving all the yagas and cleaning and preparing and maybe even cutting wood. Who knows? But yeah, Ramananda is cutting wood himself. Therefore, she is designated as sadhvi, which means a chaste, faithful wife. You know what means sadhu? Sadhu? Sanskrit word? Sage. Sage means the implied meaning. Actually, the sadhu means success also. Successful, one who has achieved his goal. So sage is by character, but by his activities. That means he was endeavoring, he was doing pretty good, and he achieved result of his austerities and his penances. Therefore, sadhu, like yes, hooray, hooray. You achieved the goal, Also, that's a meaning. Chaste and faithful wife. Her rare example is ideal of Vedic civilization. Every woman is expected to be as good and chaste as the Bhahuti or Bhavani. Today in Hindu society, unmarried girls are still taught to worship Lord Shiva with the idea that they may get husband like him. Sitting in a tree, meditating. Yes or no? I think Indian girls are trained to get husbands with at least some kind of technical university degree and master's degree in business management. This is what girls are taught nowadays. Lord Shiva is a ideal husband, not in the sense of riches and sense gratification, but because he is great of all devotees. Greatest of all devotees. Vaishnavanam saha yatha Shambhu. Shambhu, or Lord Shiva, is the ideal Vaishnava. He constantly meditates upon Rama. Today's Rama, which therefore he's meditating about Rama and chants Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chants Simhadeva Bhagavan Kichu.
Lord Shiva?
Yes. Excellent. Now we know. He meditates about Rama. And he chants also. Lord Shiva has a Vaishnava Sampradaya which is called Vishnu Swami Sampradaya. Unmarried girls worship Lord Shiva so they can expect a husband who is as good a Vaishnava as he. The girls are not taught to select husband who is very rich or very opulent of material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. The wife is dependent on the husband, and if the husband is a Vaishnava, then naturally she shares the devotional service of the husband because she renders service unto him. This is reciprocation of the service and love between the husband and wife is ideal of the householder's life. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadatara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, where to start? First of all, from the last few verses from previous chapter, I had to mention that Swayambhu Manu, the Manu itself, as such, a general, any Manu, are, as one of the main duties, is to show example and also write down, or say, initiate the knowledge of the proper activities. And there was the verse which I said there was no mention, the commentary, how it was going on. He was explaining the diverse duties of man in general in different varnas and ashramas. So it is true, Manu Samhita, the books of Manu are meant for that. At the same time, we have to understand that Manu was not, unsuccessful person himself. If we nowadays read some book which is written by the great scientists, and especially somehow comes in the mind the famous scientist in the wheelchair. As Bhaktivedanta Purnaswami said, he must have been quite a close to the big explosion, therefore he ended up in a wheelchair. So, his big explosion when the universe expanded, he was too close. Ended up in a wheelchair. So, such a scientist, when we kind of study their lives, thinking, okay, he produced so many books and literature, at the same time he ended up his life in a pitiful situation. Manu was not like that. Manu was actually, every Manu is a great sage, and as I said here, he was primeval, original king. So he was wealthy. That means he was well-to-do. So if the people are wealthy and then they write books, that's quite unusual. It's very important, and people really take serious. And if there is some poor guy writing a book, How to Become a Millionaire, who will take him serious? Same thing if you read Prabhupada's books and understand that he was successful in his life, propagating Krishna consciousness, at the same time being himself Krishna conscious. So that's serious. Or like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote books as a Grihastha. He at the same time had a huge family. He was successful in his career. He was one minister, was the position? Judge, yeah, he's high court judge, and he had so many children. Everything was so cool. At the same time, he was writing books. So therefore, you can take serious. So Manu's principle is like that. He gave instructions, and at the same time, at the end of his life, he went back to Krishna, back to Godhead. In his books, he was writing quite a bit of varnas and ashramas and principles, how they work. And the principle was working for us quite interesting in a context of family life, and unless there is two things, romance and chivalry, we don't read the books. It has to be two things: romance, some kind of man-woman interaction, and some kind of chivalry. Some kingly things. Some fighting. Some actually protection. Those things have to be there. This is for a proper book. Rupa Goswami mentioned that. If you want to write any nice book, has to do two things inside. Otherwise impossible. Same time, if you want to establish a religion, I think that comes to Chanakya Pandit. Has to be also two things. Has to be some idea of supreme. And has to be some idea of selfless service. So these things has to be for any religion. If you have any Scientology, for example, I don't know, some kind of modern religions, there have to be ideas supreme and some donations. What's the point of being part of a religion if you don't donate your money all the time to some priest? Our nonsense he is. So therefore, those principles has to be there. And if we catch up those two things, then we can understand interactions, man and woman, interactions which are quite important. There's quite a bit of stories and laws of Manu about the interactions, or which is most important for us, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. And there's just example, for example, to understand the interaction of male-female principle, we can also take the also less little bit of the family inclined Brahmanas, Kshatriyas. So original, let's say, Brahmanas, they are giving the knowledge, and according to that knowledge, Kshatriyas act and apply and create a situation. From other side of view, Kshatriyas, they are making situation, the kingdom, nicely prosperous, in which Brahmanas can live. So which one is primeval principle? The Kshatriyas or Brahmanas? Who is creating the situation proper, which is prosperous for everyone? Actually the same, at the same time. And Prabhupada explains that the primeval source is the Brahmanas, because they give subtle knowledge. They create a mental situation proper for all the Varnashrams. At the same time, physical presence, physical environment is created by Kshatriyas. So they are always interact. In a family situation, same. So we say usually who is the head of the family? Oh, you are properly prepared for family life. I'm sure. You know the secret. Yes. Woman is always right. Yeah. Who is the head of family? The man, of course. Ask any woman. She said, no. I'm behind him as behind the wall, you know. At the same time, there's desires and needs, you know. The child needs to eat, you know. It was Prabhuji again yesterday speaking, and he was traveling from far away, 720 kilometers. He came here for children's holidays, and all the way you have to drive. And he said, I can drive all the way 720 kilometers without going to the toilet until the petrol is finished. For the kids, every half an hour you have to stop, you have to pee, you have to drink, you have to do this, you have to do the rest, you have to run around. Like, it's impossible, you know. Therefore, it takes a couple hours more to stop all the way, you know. So, who is in charge? So, at one point we can say the man and the family, the parents in charge. At the same time, there's the kids and they have needs. So, they dictate what to do. In the creation of material world, it's exactly the same. We can say, who is creating material world? Krishna, right? Yeah. All his energy, he's his energy, he's creating. The question is, why? Why is creating? He needs material energy? Not at all. The conditioned souls who have desires, they dictate what kind of universe has to be created. In our universe, it's quite small. In some more living beings, the pretty fancy Brahmas with the hundreds and thousands of heads, they have much bigger universe. So for their satisfaction, for their need of creation, there's a much bigger universes, you know. So Krishna doesn't create by his own. If there is need, then yeah, we stop the car and we go for a run and go for pee, you know. So there's living beings who are desirous of material kind of activities. So therefore, the whole creation goes on. So all this interaction of supreme and the tiny, like man and female, you know, Brahmana, Kshatriya, all this principle has to be understood. And in which context we can understand better: family situation, philosophical situation, you know, rulership, in the work, boss and the person, you know. Boss, who is the boss in the workplace? The boss, of course, he's boss. By the name, he's a boss, you know. But in order for the worker to work, he needs some conditions, you know. He needs this, he needs computer, he needs this. Somebody needs additional, you know, chair, and there's people with special needs, you know, with wheelchairs. And then the whole boss will have to create whole environment so he's comfortable, he can work. So these principles have to be understood. In the work done, for example, for the man, what's a goal? What's the principle? How he's working? There has to be done work. If the lady, she's working, is it her goal to just get work done? There has to be some kind of emotional environment, emotional result of the whole thing. If you just work, and it's just terrible. Actually, if you have to choose the work for your wife, just for those who are getting married or married already, the environment in which Mataji has to be involved, she has to have an emotional interaction. For example, I know she can be salesperson in a shop, but a shop that means the nice things, not the hardware, you know. Not the all the metal hammers and stuff like that. It has to be something with the dresses, something with the art, something emotionally interactive. So you can explain to the people, and then you have also emotional interaction. Even bookkeeping probably is very emotional. I would say in some cases. Yeah, but it has to be interaction with the people, has to be emotionally involved. The man can work in a conveyor somewhere in a factory, it doesn't matter. He can work whole day, 8 hours, not seeing anyone, and he'll find. Maybe he has a picture of the family on a table, maybe somewhere. So he reminds me why he's working, actually. So these things, principles, have to understood. So that's a principle of woman. So serving here, as I said, for the woman to serve the husband is very important. And she adjusts. At the same time, she adjusts the mentality, adjusts to the laws and natures, how the husband works. It's still, at the same time, how she's using, how she's applying. Like, just imagine, okay, Cardamom didn't have, but there's 2 free wives. They're all serving husband. And the goal is same, but how they do and which part of the service will take will depend on the person. So this all backwards and forwards interaction will go on all the time. Yeah. Many times we can nowadays see the opposite thing. That's the whole thing about stories of man's being domesticated. Heard of that? According to Prabhupada's words, it means you bring the man up to the human level of interaction. He's more like an animal. So, and children too. From that point of view, you can say also, male-female principle is interaction with the parents with the children. So children also like small animals, and they just run, they eat. No, they have to be domesticated at the same time. So brought to the human level of interaction. That's the principle. Yeah. More subtle things. Bhakti Purnaswami said, just compare 2 things. What's easier, to open the can with the beans inside, or open somebody's head and get into the head? What's easier? Beans, yeah. For the man, it's beans. Easy. You can give a tool. And that's easy because the principle is kind of understood, but in which direction it goes, which is first, which is second, doesn't matter. You have an opener first, and then you bring a can, or you have a can first, and then you bring opener. Doesn't matter. It's interacting with the material world. If you invite a lady to the house and there's nothing to eat, and they said, okay, lady first and then food, Doesn't work. You have to be food first and then lady. Like party. These principles have to be understood that if you interact with living being, it's much more deeper than the interacting material world. So protection especially, it's mentioned as Manu Samhita that the protection of a woman has to be there. And currently we can say the Devahuti, she took shelter. So it means if she took shelter, it means she was protected. At the same time, we understood you cannot protect a person if you don't want to be protected. In the principles of man-female principle, disciple and guru also. The guru is boss and the disciple. You cannot say that you'll be good, protected by a spiritual master if you don't want to protect it. If you don't want to be surrendering to him, how he will protect you? It's impossible. So those things are understood. Okay, it's already half time. By request of Prabhuji and very famous day, I will tell a little bit of a story of Swarup Damodar Maharaj. I unfortunately was not present yesterday, and how much was told, and a little bit biography, not much. So there's a few things, short biography and few facts how he met Prabhupada and few quotes what inspired him. By the name Todam Damodar, he was Damodar. Same as my Guru Maharaj, he was Gopal Krishna. Gopal Krishna Khan in the passport actually. And he became Gopal Krishna Swami Das. So here, same thing. Todam Damodar was born in Banpur district, Manipur, India, on December 9, 37. Quite a bit of time ago. And his father's name was Yogendra Singh and Srimati Kanyabaki Devi. So during Second World War in 42, that means 7 years later, the whole bombing happened in India. I didn't know that before. It was actually Japanese were bombing India. Why? Why?
Because Japanese was British colony.
All right.
The Indians were fighting.
So therefore, because there was some British guys in India, they bombed India as well.
The Indian contingent in both worlds was the biggest. The Indian soldiers in both worlds was the biggest. 2 million soldiers, Indian.
Krishna. Oh. Well, some say they were pretty good fighters, actually. Loyal and skillful also. That's true. So, there was bombing, and soon after that, his father died, and he was left pretty much with the mother. And by the will of Providence, also the mother and his brother was kind of separated. He was left in the charge of his older sister. And his older sister soon got married, and at the age of 10, he started to do agriculture as independent, as a way of maintenance, tilling the ground. Yes, yeah, pretty early. So just imagine of age of 10, 12, we are completely left alone and no maintenance. And somehow, by his mentality, he didn't run to the city to work for someone. He was independent, He was tilling the ground. So later on, he got quite a nice of an education. In 1961, he finished Goethe University with honors, and he got a master's technology degree. So pretty good candidate for husband. Unfortunately, he was taking sannyas later. In the University of Calcutta, where Prabhupada's birthplace. And finally, he got his degree of chemistry in Confucius College, New York, in 1969. And in 1974, he got PhD physical organic chemistry degree at the University of California. So it's quite a scientific thing. How he met Prabhupada was quite an interesting story. A little bit reminds of Prabhupada, how he was meeting his spiritual master. So he was that time, as I said, in California and in the States. Prabhupada was visiting those places, and one of his close friends was, I think, Dr. Rao. Yeah, he invited him to. Actually, they were going somewhere, going around. Oh yeah, the knowledge was the day what whole thing happened. His mother died, and he received a telegram from India that his mother died, and straight away, of course, as a proper son, he wanted to go and perform the funeral rites and the ceremony for the passing of parents. But his uncle wrote him a letter saying, "No need. You have to be thinking in terms of Bhagavad Gita. That living, care for living, and death, living for death." So he quoted actually the verse from Bhagavad Gita. I can't remember there. I wouldn't be. Yeah, just before leaving to India, he received a letter from his uncle, Sri Karnai Singh, advising him not to return to India for Shraddha ceremony. His uncle wrote, "Being a Vaishnava, you should lament neither for living nor for dead," which is theirs, But his uncle reminded that his body is temporary, but soul is eternal. Sooner or later, there will be time to everyone to leave the temporary body, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. He instructed Damodara not to waste any time worrying about the temporary body, but concentrate on his studies, as a brahmachari. You're a brahmachari, no point. You just study. Studies and return to India after graduation, and then the uncle himself will do the ceremony. So Damodar cancelled his ticket to India at the same time, began to lose interest in the studies. So basically the things would happen with our close relatives leaving the body. We also get a little bit of detached. Because our attachment is so much to the person, closeness relationship. When you lose that relationship, you kind of a little bit lose of interest in everything's connected to those people and actually to the world as such. So that was exactly the result, and that's proper logical step for the Vaishnava also. So he cancelled and lost his interest. He spent the succeeding nights meditating on the flickering nature of this material world. That's how this thing started. Hearing of this sad news of mother's passing, Damodar's friend, Dr. Ravind Pratap Rao, came to him and suggested they go for the drive, just to have air. And at the same time they met Harinam. They saw the devotees chanting in the street, and they followed them. And the first time they went to the temple and they got the feast and they got the philosophy. But because of his uncle's instruction, he mostly concentrated on his studies. And next days, when Srila Prabhupada personally arrived in the temple, his friend was going to the temple every day. And he introduced himself, well, please come, there's some Swami coming. But same exactly as Prabhupada, he has had very bad experience about those Swamis, especially those in the West. So he didn't want to come. Didn't come 1, 2, 3, 5. I don't know how many times he was said. And finally, he said, if you don't accompany me tomorrow morning to see Prabhupada, I will never come to see you again in this lifetime. That's what his friend saying. Our friendship will be finished forever. So Damodar was surprised at his friend's seriousness, and he did not have good opinion of Indian Swamis in the USA, having had some bad knowledge of their activities. He wrongly thought that Prabhupada would also be like him. However, out of friendship, he decided to accompany Dr. Rao the next day. Something similar took place before Srila Prabhupada's first meeting with his spiritual master. So later on, actually, I was reading the web page made specially for Maharaj, and the web page is quite nice as a book. You can, of course, there's links you click, but then if you click very first link, then it's like page, next, 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 and there's no big page. It's just one page like this, next, next. And the story goes on, and when it comes to his preaching, he actually received, and we know, as you mentioned, there's a book, Life Comes from Life. Prabhupada said quite a few quotes and gave instructions to Maharaj how he should prove in a scientific level and in a scientific society that life comes from life. So a few quotes from Prabhupada which inspired Maharaj. Prove this particular subject matter, that soul cannot be manufactured by a combination of chemicals, especially because Maharaj had a philosophical degree on molecular physics and chemistry. So he was able to preach on that level, on scientific level, and there's so many scientists like having Nobel prizes and stuff like that associated with him, and he met Dalai Lama, he met Mother Teresa. He was actually preaching in the highest level of scientific society. Other quote: the scientific method includes hypothesis, experimentation, observation, and then demonstration. This is how the scientists work. This is perfect, but scientists cannot actually demonstrate in their laboratories that the life comes from matter. You know how they try to prove it? Original idea, how the universe started to produce according to scientists. Before Big Bang, what happened? Yeah, but before that, how it became there? You don't know. Because you're not a scientist. I'm a scientist, I don't know. Amazingly enough, I think I told already, my mother was quite a bit of a scientist. In old age, whole life she was teaching children. At old age, suddenly she found very interesting these scientific books, And she was reading all of them, not just reading, but actually writing down all the quotes and stuff like that. She had like a whole notebook like full of different scientific quotes. And she explained me that original idea that there was before the Big Bang, because bang means there's some kind of thing. There was universal soup, they call it. Universal kitchery. Oh, that's Indian scientists. Western scientists say soup. Original soups, that means there's some kind of elements, very subtle way elements, and then there was, what do you think was? It was thunderbolt, And because of that thunderbolt, the first elements are joined together. Indra. That's how they kind of, Because Big Bang, nothingness is kind of, it's good idea, but many scientists don't actually approve that. So they maintain there's alternative. There's a Big Bang theory and there's original soup theory. So let's do some products. Dwarf Sampradaya. Oh yeah. Dwarf Sampradaya. Yeah. But that thing. So, what was it yesterday? Day before yesterday, we were saying that all the elements were not present there, and everything was frozen. So there was no time before creation, before Krishna or God entered into the material energy, and everything was frozen. But actually, it was not even frozen. It was no movement. It just for us, it's so difficult to understand how these things happen. So. Therefore, Prabhupada was so keen to say, since we understand that in a society, scientists are kind of a little bit of leaders of the society. As we say in our society, Brahmanas are leaders and Kshatriyas implement the whole thing. So governments, big governments, they are implementing things and they are looking after people. At the same time, they are bewildered and led by current, our days, scientists. So therefore, to kind of lead the ship in the right direction, Prabhupada was very keen, and he was very happy. He said, I'm finally getting, when he met Damodar Prabhu at that time, he said, finally Krishna sent me one Indian boy, which can help me. He was pretty early. Therefore he was... Just as living body of a man produces chemicals, that we understand, it produces liquid and maybe sour things. You eat too much and there's a sour coming up. And some other things which creates him. The Supreme Life, the Supreme Lord, is producing all the chemicals found in atmosphere. So if we compare our body as a small factory of elements, there's like a plant. He has just water, maybe a few elements, and it produces the leaves, flowers, and the smell. It's just coming from what? From water and sun. Two or three elements, and it's so much variety. So Prabhupada says, as our body is producing those chemicals, the Supreme Life, Lord, He is producing all the chemicals found in the atmosphere, in the water, in the humans, in animals, in the earth. That is called mystic power. Unless the mystic power of the Supreme Lord accepted, there will be no solution of the problems of original life. So these are quotes which are inspired Maharaj, and his preaching. I'm truly saying, I was completely amazed. The preaching activities, the people he met, the impact he made on the society is maybe the name is not so well known, but people who are. In his association, in his presence, they change their lives, especially at the scientific level. So it's very good. 10 minutes left for Ramachandra, which I have the most part. I prepared 45 pages. If you want, I can read. Very nice. But before I read that, there's two quotes which I like to share with you, and they are with signs how our much closer times, personalities were performing Ramachandra's pastimes. And who knows who was that? Lord Chaitanya himself. And Nityananda too. So, in their early childhood or later on, they performed pastimes connected to Lord Ramachandra, and they're extremely sweet. So there's 5 verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 15. The Bengali is so nice, and if you just read the Bengali, it's excellent. Paramevesha Prabhu Aila Nijagrana Eimatalila Kare Gauranga Sundara. In the great ecstasy, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to his residence. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Gaura Sundara, performed various pastimes. Displaying emotions of Hanuman, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took a large tree branch and, mounting the walls of the Lanka fort, began to dismantle it. Yes. In ecstasy of Hanuman, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu angrily said, "Where's that rascal Ravana? He has kidnapped universal Mother Sita. Now I shall kill him and all his family." In that mode, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everyone became very much astonished to see him, an emotional ecstasy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and everybody began to chant, all glories, again and again. Other quote goes a little bit longer and comes from Chaitanya Bhagavatam, Adlila, chapter 9. This is the story of Nityananda Prabhu, childhood pastimes. All glories to Sri Chaitanya. O ocean of mercy, all glories to Nityananda Prabhu. One day, Nityananda Prabhu played a constructing bridge of trees and stones across the ocean as all children played a role of monkey soldiers. In this way, he could chop veranda plants and throw into the water. You know, like kids, you go around and you chop some trees and throw in the puddle of water. In such a way, the kids were playing. They were pretending they were giant trees, and the child would say, "Jai Ram, Jai Raghunath, victory Ram, victory to Lord Raghu dynasty." Lord himself assumed whom? Balaram. Yes, Lakshman, of course. He assumed the role of Lakshman and bowed down, a bow in the hand, and he made his way to palace of Sugriva. And a fit anger, saying, "You wretched monkey, my Lord Rama is becoming distressed by your actions. My Lord is waiting on the Malyavan mountain, burdened with grief. And you, O wicked monkey, are busy making merry with a woman. If I'm to spare your life, then go to Rama as fast as you can and offer him your help." He was threatening such a way. Of course, that talking was amongst the children, we have to understand. It was child's plays, but when the adults observed that, they were pretty amazed because they knew especially the Vaishnavas, who was the parents of Chaitanya and Nityananda. They were pretty much aware and knew the story of Ramachandra. So when they were looking children, they were amazed. Another day, in the mood of Lakshman, he would chastise Parashurama in anger, saying, "O Brahmana, I can't be held accountable for what happens if you do not flee at once." The children, in their innocence, would take Nityananda's Prabhu's absorption in the mood of Lakshmana not to be nothing more than childhood play. No, children didn't take serious. They just, okay, I'm a king. Especially when the children play the kings, they really exaggerate the things. It has to be real kings don't act like that, I guess. They did have any knowledge of his position. They did have any knowledge of his position as Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some of them would roam about as the 5 monkeys, and taking role of Lakshman, Nityananda Prabhu would ask, "Who are you monkeys? We're roaming forests. Tell me, I am the servant of Raghunatha." They would answer him, "We wander here in the fear of Bali. Lead us to Rama." We accept the dust of your feet upon our heads. Giving them hearty embrace, he would lead them to his master and bow down before the feet of Rama, falling flat like a road. In the role of Lakshmana, one day Nityananda Prabhu was beaten by Indrajit. Other day he would play a killing Indrajit. Having made one of the boys take the role of Bibhishana, he would lead Bibhishana in the presence of Rama and install him as a king of Lanka. Another day, child would shout, "Look, here comes Ravana. Beware of his shafts of many bow. Let Lakshman protect you." All these pastimes are going on. But one of the most amazing pastimes was that one day, as a Lakshman, he was injured. He was injured and he fell on the ground unconscious. And kids like playing, like, okay, nice. But after a few minutes, they look, he doesn't move. And not only he doesn't move, he doesn't breathe, And all the parents, they were coming and running. What happened, Child is not breathing. They try to get him up. And then some of the friends, they remember that before that, in the beginning of the play, he said, if something happens, let Hanuman find the special herbs for me, In such a way, they actually did. One of the boys straight away imposed the Hanuman, and he was running. And by the way, on the way, he met some demons, and finally he went to some ant hill, grabbed some grass and put in his nose, and straight away Nityananda woke up. So those pastimes was performed, and oh brother, get up! All these nice explanations here. A child disguised as a Rakshasa ran after Hanuman and threatened to eat him, saying, "You have defeated the crocodile, but now you must defeat me. Who will revive you, Lakshman, if I swallow you alive?" Hanuman answered, "Your Ravana is a worthless dog. Take your heels and be gone." All these childhood pastimes are so sweet. So Hadai Pandit took a child in his arms when he woke up and was very delighted. Everyone asked, "My dear child, where did you learn all these things?" And Lord would laughingly answer, "These all are my divine pastimes." So I think we'll put this, there's from Purna Pragya Prabhu, he took summary of this pastime and Yudhakanda Ramayana, but this takes about 45 pages, so I'll put it later. If you have time, we'll read it. Maybe now you have some commentaries or questions, please.
Krishna also used to play, as a childhood pastime, he also used to play Ramlila.
Yes. Very nice. Where was that? I can't remember where it was explained. The Ramayana is explained in 9th canto in Srimad Bhagavatam. Briefly, and Prabhupada explained that if there is some perfect explanation, all the other scriptures don't elaborate and they just give summary because there's already been described before. But Krishna, can you tell where was it explained?
I think it's a commentary from the Goswamis that explain how Krishna also was saying, in my previous birth I was Ram, and all the coward boys and girls are like, Krishna.
Yeah.
And then he built a bridge actually across the Yamuna.
Oh, Krishna. So nice. Yeah, but that pastime of Ramachandra, just a short while ago, Narahari Mataji was telling a story about Ramachandra, but she told completely different reason why the stones were floating. Can you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Because usually story goes that Ramachandra's name was written in the stones and therefore they're floating. But she told some completely new thing, I never heard of that, at some sages, and sages were performing yagyas and sacrifices, and the forest monkeys came and disturbed them. And sometimes they disturb them, and sometimes they run away. And when they run away, you try to catch them, and this and that, and give it back. And they didn't give it back; they just throw in the water. Like throw it water and run away. So sages cursed them, give blessings. I don't know how you could say. Whatever you will throw in the water, it will not drown in the water; it will float on top. So all the paraphernalia, where they were running and catching and throwing in the water, they could just throw in the water and there's float, and they collect all the yagya stuff and go back to the shore, such a way. And later on, of course, that blessing turned into very interesting. So they were throwing the stones in the water and they're also floating. So this is a different story. That it's quite a nice one. But yeah, Ramachandra's killing. Just one thing came across when I was reading Ramayana here, that when he was fighting with the Ramana in a final battle, that was so intense and so absorbing that all the army, they were just stopped. All the fighters, they were just looked at them. They couldn't do their own fighting. They were completely absorbed in that mesmerizing battle was happening. And at some stage, they were shouting, shooting arrows at each other, and sometimes the javelins and all different weapons. And he was driving chariot of Indra, I think so. And his driver, he was running around and bringing back to each other and like this, and like a whole dance with chariots with us in the battlefield. And Arjuna was very perfect in shooting, but Ramachandra was much more better. And by arrows, he was cutting his head off. And straight away, when Ravana's head was cut off, the new head come up. And sometimes 2 heads come up, and sometimes 10 heads, and sometimes 1 head. And then he was shooting and just cutting the head off. And at some stage, he was starting to counting. It was already 100. There was 100 heads already lying around in the battlefield, and still Ravana was okay, And he was amazed, what's going on? And then the driver of Indra's chariot, he reminded him that you are Supreme Personality of Godhead, You have your supreme weapon, Brahmastra, and use that one. So it's quite interesting. So, yeah, Lord has a interesting tendency to get carried away by his own pastime so much that he forgets that he's a Lord, and he uses the normal weapons. But of course, when he's using them, he's quite a perfect thing. But Ravana was also, yes, Prabhu.
Also, they're saying that because he was trying then to kill him.
Mm. Right. Yes, I know that story. But how you get out, Sita?
But then I think that as I remember, his weak point was his navel. And Ram shooting to the navel, and then he couldn't cut the heads. He couldn't kill him in the heart because Sita was there. And then the navel was his weak point.
Why the navel was weak? I have to go deeper. Yeah. I remember because he was still thinking of Sita. He couldn't. That's good. So, this is a lesson we should learn. If we have Krishna in the heart, or Ramachandra in the heart, no one can kill you. I was saying, Rake Krishna Mareke, Mare Krishna Rakeke. If you have someone trying to kill you, it cannot do unless Krishna is allowing. Or if Krishna wants to kill you, then of course it's impossible. Although, then the question is how the killing happens, How the killing happens, We just read a couple weeks ago in the Nectar of Devotion, one of the symptoms of the ecstasy was death. You know that? But that symptom doesn't happen in the spiritual world. That symptom happens in the material world. So that actually means death, like you are so much in separation of Krishna that you leave your body. But suddenly? Well, depends how strong is a sense of separation, You can Krishna. And if you have weak separation, then you die for weak and slowly. Lifetimes, yeah. Die, and there's still no point. No result, let's try again. Because you think because of dying you go to Krishna. No. That was also Rupa Goswami, was not, who was trying to kill himself, throwing under the wheels of Jagannatha Rathayatra cart. He's thinking like, my body is useless. He had a leprosy, or no, he had some kind of disease, and he is thinking, okay, I cannot go to Jagannath because of that. Maybe some of the guards may get disease, or I cannot go embrace and see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So no point for my life. I'll throw my body underneath the rat car wheels of Jagannath, and then dream straight away. Chaitanya said, "You think, rascal, that body belongs to you. This is my body. I have great plans for that body. So never think." Soon after that, his disease was gone, and rest of his life he was preaching the mission of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, let's expect the second part of day, which is rally. Oh, sorry, which is which is the fire. So we can see. Last year was pretty nice. We were shooting fiery arrows at the Ravana. Is it going to happen tonight? Okay. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ramachandra Vijayotsava ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.